What is the single biggest myth portrayed as a picture migrants feels like it gets shattered after they arrive in Australia?
Abroad is automatically glamorous because I think everyone has their own definition of making it abroad. Even if you do get a job, there are so many other things. I think for me, I isolate myself. I want to do something for myself. Initial couple of months were definitely felt very lonely for me. I realized that that is not something for me. And I think, putting yourself out there, it also really helps you build confidence.
Gen Zs are more connected to the social media in a way. I think it creates a bit more anxiety about what other people think.
Everyone is on social media. It has become a culture comparing ourselves with the other person on the screen who we do not even know.
As they say, you're sitting under a tree covered with clouds, imagining where the sun is.
Yeah.
Before we dive into this conversation, please give me just 20 seconds. I know you've got hundreds of podcasts you could listen to, but any point during Unlayered, you paused and thought, that was me, or I felt that too. I'd love to ask a quick, simple favor. Please help me with a follow or subscribe to my channel, because that one click will not only help me bring more conversations to you, but for others who might need it. And it means the world for this work to continue. Thank you so much. Enjoy the conversation. Srishti, welcome to Unlayered. I'm super excited to have you here.
Hi, Pan. Thank you so much for having me here. I am also super excited to share my story.
We are going to dive into your story, but before that, I know that you're an international student and a migrant who arrived in Australia, and you're an aspiring psychologist. Let me ask a question to start our conversation, which can resonate with a lot of migrants who will be listening here. You know that a lot of migrants come here with a lot of hopes and dreams, right? From your experience, what is the single biggest myth that may be portrayed as a picture and migrants feels like it is shattered after they arrive in Australia?
I think when I think of the single biggest myth that migrants are sold is that life abroad is automatically glamorous. Because before you decide to come abroad, you see on Instagram this version of Australia where you see beautiful beaches, you see jobs that are paying you well, you see people who have sort of made it. So it is very easy to get into that trap that, oh, if I go abroad, oh, my life will be sorted. But it is only when you land here is when you see that reality is so much different. It is so much tougher because the cost of living is high, and it is not very easy to get a job as it is shown in social media. And I think the biggest, and at least for me it was the biggest, the emotional toll of being away from the family is actually heavier than you can expect. So, that glossy picture of life abroad is very glamorous. It actually fades away very quickly when you're actually here and living your day-to-day life.
That's an amazing insight, and I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, I resonated with that a lot. What was that dream for you before you migrated, and what was your experience in terms of the reality? Are you open to share
Yeah,
that?
of course. I think for me, the biggest expectation that I had for myself was that, I want to make a life for myself from scratch. I don't want a life that has been handed over to me by my parents or by my society. So I want to do something for myself. So, when talking about the gap between the expectation and reality, I think a lot of migrants, like you said, they come with a lot of expectations, which are not just external, but they are also external. Like there are a lot of unsaid expectations that migrants have from the society, from the parents, and from the relatives. And when you land here, you realize that reality is so much different because you really have to slog it out. You really have to juggle everything. So I think it can kind of lead to an identity crisis. And that's what happened with me. And honestly, it still happens with me every now and then where I find myself in a situation where I am, have this constant stream of thought where I think whether coming abroad was the right decision or not, whether I'll be able to make it here or not, because the culture that I come from is so much different than the culture that I see here. But on that note, I think what I've realized is that the mindset shift is really important, because over time I have started to see that identity crisis as an opportunity to, learn more about myself, to learn to be more resilient, to learn to be more adaptive, and, making myself realize that my identity is not based on, this dream of making it abroad, because I think everyone has their own definition of making it abroad. But your identity is actually tied to the way you navigate challenges, the way you come, the way you handle the obstacles. Because at the end of the day, that is what defines your character and identity wherever you are in the world.
Beautifully explained. And I can resonate with 100% everything that you shared, because it took me back to 10 years when I migrated. And you talk about how culture shapes your expectations, especially sometimes the unsaid ones, and how it has an impact on identity when you actually experience after you migrated. And then it creates immediately a gap, right? A gap between the expectations outside, but most importantly, internal gap between what you carried, the assumptions, the thought process, and that dream that you have. And when you start to live it, when these expectations are not met, it creates a gap between you and the actual reality. That is, I think, far more intense than the external ones. Of course, as migrants, it influences both. But I wanted to ask that, what were those unsaid expectations you shared? Can we dive into a bit on that, like especially aligning with the cultures that we come in? Maybe we can talk about the South Asian cultures. What are those unsaid expectations for you in your personal experience, and perhaps from the wider migrant community of friends, from what you experienced so far?
I think coming from a South Asian culture, a lot of people carry expectations around, we are spending so much money on your, education to send you abroad. So there is an implicit expectation that, you will be able to be financially independent as soon as you can and find a job and thrive in that job. But reality is different, like the ground reality is different, because like I said, it is not very easy to get a job. And even if you do get a job, there are so many other things that, you are juggling. So it becomes difficult to, keep up with those expectations. So yeah, I think the biggest expectation is that you like, is that financial burden on the parents, because they have done so much for you. So that is one of the biggest expectation externally, and I think internally as well, because you kind of feel obligated to, give it back to your parents because they have done so much for you.
That's 100% quite resonant with me. And I think that's why I said I think culture plays a huge role in it. And I find that especially South Asian cultures, I'm not sharing this in a way of judging a system. We are all part of the cultures we come from, and the conditioning that we have also part of the upbringing, the childhood experience, and that connection with your parents, right? In a psychological, now I know you're an aspiring psychologist. From that, I'm keen to ask, when that gap appears or the identity crisis appears for a migrant after migrating, what is the impact on their mindset level and also the nervous system? Can you share a bit on that?
I think on mindset, it is definitely the fact that you are juggling a lot, so you can get into the trap of, loneliness sometimes, because you tend to compare yourself with your peers and the people who are, in your mind doing better than you. So I think for me, I kind of isolate myself, and it can work differently for different people. But I kind of isolate myself, and how it shows up in the nervous system is that, I tend to get anxious, and it can also manifest as sleep disturbances. And then, speaking about the thoughts that you might have from a psychological perspective, you might feel the hopelessness, and whether I belong here or not, whether coming abroad was the right decision or not. So, am I enough? So, stuff like that.
Very valid and deep thoughts that I come across when coaching people as well, because that first will the loneliness part of loneliness in social isolation, because you basically have to start over with probably zero network, zero friends, but also loneliness within you when you know that you are carrying so much expectations from your family, and then also that doubt whether you will be able to make it and commit to those expectations, and that loneliness trying to juggle everything within your mind. Even in the household, if you are living with another migrant, sometimes it still can be a lonely journey. um, and the other part, as you mentioned, it's quite interesting because it needs to be like more communicated on how it comes up in your nervous system, especially anxious thoughts, hopelessness, and then how your body reacts to this as well. Is this a part of, have you experienced this loneliness and social isolation, the anxious thoughts as a migrant?
100%. 100%. I think initially, when I just landed in Melbourne, I had some of the toughest months because, back home, everyone is busy with their life. They are moving on with their life without you. And then here you are, new in the country, trying to find your place, trying to find your people, your community. And initially, I did not really have any close friends. So I used to feel lonely on the daily. So I used to be in my apartment and, watch Netflix and scroll through social media and read messages from my family back home. And it did actually manifest in my behaviors as well. Like, um, there were, sleep disturbances that I faced, and the thoughts, anxious thoughts that you mentioned, those. So initial couple of months were definitely felt very lonely for me, as I think it does with every migrant.
Very valid thoughts, Srishti. So you said like you found some avenues or channels to manage that. I'm keen to ask because sometimes I know this can be portrayed as channels of like to escape yourself into. And I know that as an aspiring psychologist, you are very aware of like whether that will really address the root cause of the problem, or that will help them be aware of their thought process. What are these channels from your experience working with migrants, now that you made friends and also now you're getting into this psychology and counseling the part? What are these other channels that usually migrants find when they go through loneliness and anxious thoughts, and how do you advise if anyone is going through that process and someone maybe is doing it unconsciously? What is your experience on that and your thoughts?
I think some of the channels that people resort to are definitely ones that I mentioned. Finding an escape through watching Netflix, or finding an escape through scrolling social media. Then I have also seen migrants who tend to go on, like self-destructive path, where they tend to get themselves into the smoking culture. And because I think from what I have seen here, the culture of smoking and vaping is very profound here. Like every other person you will see, they will carry a vape or a cigarette. So that, and then I think binge eating is another one that I have seen, which is their way of emotionally coping with the loneliness. And when talking about the advice, I think start small. Try to put yourself out there, and by that I mean, try to initiate conversation with as many people as you can. And I know it sounds very daunting because I have been an introvert, and I was a very big introvert back in my home country. So it was difficult for me to, just go up to a stranger and say hi, or like just say how's it going. But I think it is very important for you to get yourself out of that comfort zone, push yourself out of that comfort zone, because at the end of the day, that is why you've come abroad, like, right? To grow, to make a life for yourself. So start small. Let's say if you're in an elevator and you see a person next to you, try to initiate a conversation with them. Or if you are in your class, try to ask questions from the professor. And I think Melbourne is a very diverse country, so you will find clubs for almost every culture here. So try to, sign up for that and go to events, because there is an event happening in Melbourne all around the year. So just push yourself out of that comfort zone, push yourself out of the four walls of your room, and eventually I think it does really help, and eventually you do really find your people and your tribe.
It's very valid insights, and I think they're very practical, Srishti, because I know that even when I guide someone, even in the earlier days for me, you can be an introvert and loneliness will add another layer to it, and emotionally you don't want to do anything. You're going to the easy escape methods, such as you said, it's either drugs, alcohol, binge eating, Netflix, social media. But internally you know that it is not really helping you get out of that, but you still go to it. That's why it becomes addictive, and it can be a habitual pattern of you going every time you feel it. But if you are feeling socially isolated, and if you think that you are isolated from your own country, you don't have any friends, it becomes increasingly difficult to take that step, even though you know that you have to. And that also creates a conflict of not doing it. I personally understand that feeling, but as you rightly said, it's not about going to take doing a massive thing straight away, because that's why sometimes society normalize, hey, just do it, right? It's not as easy for anyone, if especially if that experience is a bit more traumatic, and their body needs to be healed too, in addition to the mind. But our message here, I think, is that you have a choice. You can start with a simple step, just one simple step. For me, it was just saying hi to the coffee truck on my way to my part-time work. 10 years ago, I know I didn't find a job for 6 months, and I was feeling lonely, isolated, all those. But I realized when I was walking, and like I just decided to buy a coffee. I think I didn't even buy a coffee. I just said, hi, how was your day? To the coffee person, like without expecting anything in return. And that sparked a conversation. And on my way back also, I know that coffee truck was wrapping up and finishing up for the day. It just create something out of the bubble that I was in. So it doesn't need to be you are going to an interview and waiting for that chance to speak up or communicate. It can be just saying hi to a stranger, like putting yourself out there to speak up in while you're doing professionally or in your university, saying, asking about where you're coming from in your class, right? Just creating a conversation. So at least taking micro step from the bubble, and then see how you feel it. It doesn't need to be the right step. That's why we also create a lot of expectations that if that step is not the one that I'm expecting, then I immediately, we are usually good critics of ourselves, that okay, it didn't work out. It's it's not going to work out, and it's not that, without expecting too much of a return out of it and judging yourself if it doesn't go well. At least having that intention to take minor step out of that. That was for me my experience so
And
far.
I think, putting yourself out there, it also really helps you build confidence. And I think once you start initiating conversations with, strangers, with random people you see on the street, uh, and really start to build genuine connections with other people, it also really helps later with your job. because I think we can talk about this later because it's an entire different conversation. But I think building your network is also a really, important strategy for you being a migrant here. And I think, like you mentioned about the judgment that we have for ourselves, I think it is also about the perceived judgment, like if I go up to the person, what will they think of me? But I think one thing that I've realized over the course of me being here is that nobody's thinking about you as much as you think they are thinking about you, if that makes sense. So, yeah, like just take a micro step, like you said, and eventually that will lead to macro steps.
I want to dive into that because I know this assumption of what the perceived judgment is a human condition that not only migrants but anyone can relate to, right? That creates fear of judgment, fear of making a mistake, fear of appearing, especially if you have dealing with perfectionism, then appearing to be perfect. Um, was there any moment or an experience that you actually realized that it was not the judgment that you thought in your life so far here in Australia? Moment or an experience that you actually realized that it was not the judgment that you thought in your life so far here in Australia?
I think there have been a lot of moments where I thought that it is me and it is not the, society or the external reality. And I think one example that I can mention here is, speaking up in class, because I think a lot of migrants can relate with this. Um, Initially, I was really scared, raising my hand and talking to the professors, like asking questions to the professors, because I used to feel the imposter syndrome. And I used to feel that, everyone else in the class is so much more competent than me, and everyone else is, so much better than me. So initially, I was very shy, and I did not really make an effort to, make myself visible, basically. But I think over time, after having the exposure and after having the experiences, is only when I realized that it is nobody is thinking like that about me, especially because I am in a counseling class, and the one thing that we are taught is to not be judgmental, right? So it was me who was judging myself and not the class or the outside world. So I think initially, like you said, everyone feels it, but it is only with time and with that mindset shift is when you realize that, it is just you who is being so critical of yourself, and it is.
It's a valid lesson that is very needed in today's world, because I know more and more social media comes in, more it is normalized within, especially teenagers. May I ask, are you which generation are you from? Is it Gen Z, Gen like this?
I am, I am a Gen Z.
So yeah, I think I know that Gen Z, the generation itself. I'm before that, so I think millennial, right? Gen Zs are more connected to the social media in a way. I think it creates a bit more anxiety about what other people think. I even realized like there was this news where this it's called petrol prompt anxiety. Like Gen Zs are very anxious to go out and pump fuel to their cars, fearing that if someone see them doing a mistake, that I find very interesting, because if they can't get out of the house and pump fuel, even at the cost of making a mistake or asking from help, they are just stuck at home asking people to do it for themselves. And that again, because of that fear of thought, fear of judgment, and that hopefully a clip might go to TikTok or social media, and they're restricting themselves to, taking that one step, even at just a necessity, like a necessary thing, like pumping fuel to your car, Srishti. So that's how intense it is, like nowadays, and that's why people like you are more needed in this society to inspire and educate these generations, I feel.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Pan. And you mentioned something around, how Gen Z restrict themselves into their homes and then scroll the social media, TikTok, Instagram. Ironically enough, I think that is where the problem stems from, because let's be honest, in today's world, everyone is on social media. Not one person I know is who is not on social media. So I think everyone is giving the picture perfect version of themselves, and nobody is really giving you, behind the scenes of what is happening, what is going wrong in their lives. So I feel like it has become a culture of comparing ourselves with the other person on the screen who we do not even know. So we compare our trajectory and where we are in life with the other person, and that is what is making us all the more isolated. So, like, I'm not saying that stop being on social media, because that is not very sustainable in today's world. But it's just that know that, your journey is very different from theirs, and your timeline is very different from theirs. So just take inspiration, but do not let it get it to you. Do not let it get to your head that, oh, everyone is doing better than me. Not really. Like, everyone has their day of crappy days, and everyone have their day of, the rainbow days. So just know that you are on your own trajectory.
Wonderful lesson. And yeah, I can attest to that, because someone might post a trip they've gone to, or a wonderful experience, an award they won, but we are immediately seeing that as a continuous life event that they're all celebrating, right? But our mind doesn't go, when was the last time they posted? Instead, we just scroll, and we are scrolling, and everything is a celebratory thing, or something to be joyful of. Immediately that creates that, more and more you see it, it feels like everyone is having the time of their life, and I'm not. But we, of course, in that moment, you don't have time, because you're maybe unconscious about it, you're just consuming, maybe as a part of an escapism, just to get something and not to be with your that uncomfortable emotion, so that it feeds more energy into that negative thought. Just seeing what others are doing, and I'm just falling behind. I think it's an important topic that to be discussed for continuously. As you said, you can't avoid it, it's the future, you can't get away from social media, but you can be intentional about how you use it and how you consume content. Srishti, I want to dive into this belonging or identity shift, right? Because as a migrant, this is one of the main challenges I feel in a migrant's journey they face. Soon after you migrate, I know you have some kind of an idea before you migrate. Even for me, I researched, I got a bit of understanding from the agent, and also my understanding about that it is a Western culture. But I had no clue about how I feel about my identity. Uh, and only after I migrated and start living here. So that's why I say it's totally different than when you go on holidays, and compared to where you start living in a country. What was your experience like, and how you relate to it now in terms of balancing the two cultures?
Uh, I think, like you mentioned, initially you have an idea about, the culture, Western culture. But I think when you come abroad, you realize that you are sort of in between, because you're rooted in your culture, but you are trying to adapt to a new culture. And there's actually a term for it, which is called liminal identity, which basically means that your identity rests on, threshold of two opposites. So, as a migrant, I think you are navigating hybrid culture and hybrid identities. So, like, I'll give you an example where, this Western culture and basically made me feel like, very out of place, and the fact that maybe I do not belong here. So there was this one of the sports event in MCG. I think it was either AFL or rugby. And I'll be honest with you, I had no clue. I had no clue about the rules. I had no clue about how the game works. So I remember I was just sitting there and looking at the ground, and thinking, oh, what a beautiful stadium. Whereas the people around me, they were rooting for their teams, they were screaming, they were chanting. So that made me feel like, okay, maybe I don't belong here, or what am I doing here? But I think what matters here and the key here is that ask questions, because if you think about it, if someone from Australia comes to your culture, they wouldn't know a lot of things about your culture. And the only way to get to know about a culture is to ask questions, as many questions as you can, even if it makes you come across as silly. It just shows that you are willing to learn and you are curious about their culture. So ask questions, b, read about it as much as you can, and c, go to events like this. Even if it means that you do not understand how it works, just go to events like this. And I think Melbourne is actually the cultural capital of Australia, so there are cultural events happening all around the year. So go to them and ask questions from people. And yeah, I think that really makes a difference, and that really helps you become a part of this culture.
I can relate to it so much because I know that now we are just about to have the AFL finals and we were just discussing about it. Even for me, I had no clue when I started. Like, I know in September season, when I found my first job, there was a huge buzz around. There were flags. Every Monday is about talking about footy on the weekend. And I felt like, yeah, a bit isolated. I had no clue. But I didn't sit there thinking that, even though it was uncomfortable. But I had an intention to ask questions. I, at least when I, on the days I didn't have any questions, I observed, I listened. I went home and did my research. I picked up my phone and asked about what's AFL is, why it's so important. I listened, I observed, and then I slowly, when I built some confidence to ask questions, I asked questions from my colleague sitting next to me. And then she said, yeah, I also don't follow. But then I asked for the next person. I didn't stop asking questions. Finally, I got to a person who was open to share about what this is. I felt like with no judgment, and that gives me confidence to ask more and search more and slowly integrate myself. I think one reason that migrants see differently is that if I feel I don't belong and that's about it, we build a wall around it. That I am from a different culture, these others are from a different culture too, and there are different activities, cultural events, sports that are native for them, which is not like foreign for me. And I will, it's easier to build that wall, but it's just about understanding, okay, how big this wall is becoming and what am I doing every day to make it keep it at a different, like a manageable level. If I share that in that way, and that's what I did. And now I'm a huge fan of Geelong. I'm not saying everyone should follow sports. It can be anything. It could be coffee. It could be so many things you can integrate into a culture. And that's why I think migrants also have to play their part. It doesn't matter, and respect the country that you live in. Differences will be there, but it's just about how you embrace those differences and try to make a living out of the country that you now call home. um, right. In terms of identity, that shift that is happening when you move, what is happening in psychological, I know that you share this concept, but in terms of psychologically and mind nervous system wise, when you feel like you're an outsider, what is really happening, what's going on?
I feel like we talked about loneliness, So I feel like why loneliness happens and what is going on in your mind is that loneliness is actually a threat to your sense of belonging, right? So man is a social animal, right? And we all have the need to belong. We all have the need to be a part of the tribe. We all need to find our people. So I think when you feel that wave of loneliness, you kind of put yourself into the things that we mentioned earlier, that the anxious thoughts and the sleep disturbance. So I think it kind of feeds into your thoughts about you being an outsider. So I feel like it's actually a social pain. So I feel like that is what goes on in your mind as an outsider when you are new to a
Have
country.
you come across friends or people you talk with in the work that you do who go through this identity shift and in this gap?
I feel like every migrant, or not even the migrant, the people who are native of Australia also go through this, identity crisis. Like, of course, their reasons are different, but I have seen a lot of people who have gone through these phases, and I feel like there are times where they still go through these phases because, like we mentioned, everyone has this idea of making it abroad, and as a migrant, you are constantly in a struggle, you are constantly juggling. So, to answer your question, yes, I have seen a lot of people around me who kind of go through that identity crisis every now.
On the other side, like we discussed about why we need to take small steps to integrate to the culture, taking small steps, asking questions, observing about what other people are around you, whether it's school, career, wherever, so that you take small steps to integrate into the culture with an open mind. One other thing I find is the other side of it is that migrants thinks they have to suppress their own values to survive in the new country. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a good topic to have a conversation about because I think when we talk about suppressing our own values or suppressing our own self, that also I feel goes back to the culture that we come from. Because as someone who has come from a South Asian culture, I can totally relate with this because we are socially conditioned to suppress ourselves and suppress our needs for the harmony of the society, or uh, and I think that is what translates here, to suppress yourself. And I think the reason that people do it here, and I feel at least initially they are not radically themselves, is again to to fit in, to find their place in a totally new country. But I don't think that is the best way to go about it, because you can pretend, or you can suppress your values for only some time, and after that, like, it will sort of make you resistant, and it will be harmful for yourself if you keep doing that in the long run. So yeah.
How can someone be aware of in, like, sometimes when you have to adapt, because there is this constant battle, right? Am I the person who's suppressing, or should I just fully integrate? I think we are all trying to normalize these feelings of the balancing act. Sometimes balancing is an overcrowded word, and its balance can be different to each person's journey, their values and their experiences, right? What do you have to say if someone is going through this shift? They are very confused, they feel like everything's a gray area, and they're not aware of, should I suppress what I believe in my own values, or should I integrate into this new identity? What do you have to say in terms of psychological angle?
I think this is where reflection comes in. You really have to sit with yourself and introspect and reflect on what your values are, the things that you enjoy and the things that you do not enjoy. Like, I will give you an example. I mentioned about the event that I went to at MCG. After that, I have been to a couple more events, sports event, and I realized that that is not something for me, and I do not really enjoy it like I would enjoy, let's say, going to a gym or going for swimming. So now I am in a point where if someone if, like, let's say a group of mine is going to an event at MCG, so, and they ask me whether I want to join, so I will not think twice before saying no, because I know that that is not what I genuinely enjoy. So you really have to reflect and think about what is something that you want, and who are you basically. Where are your values, what are your morals, what are your principles, and then operate within them, and know that it is okay to operate within them, because even though you might feel that it is important for you to do this thing that you do not enjoy, to integrate fully, but you will find people who enjoy same things as you, and who also feel like they don't need to do these things that they do not enjoy to integrate with the local culture, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Saying no is a big one of the biggest struggles for a migrant, right? I'm not trying to generalize, but I'm telling from my own personal experience. But I find also from the people that I've helped, I coach, has this cultural value. It comes as a cultural value to be humble and be more um, modest about things, and that sometimes not allowing you to set boundaries for yourself for your own well-being. And that's also one of the reasons. So I think I really like your suggestion. Whenever you feel that discomfort, you are in a messy middle or you're in that shift, first thing what you can do, or the best thing you can do, is to be more aware and understand yourself. Why do you feel this way? Without going to an external tool, when you can do something internally. As one of the wisest philosophers say, the true wisdom is self-understanding. And I wish that people can put more effort to understand themselves, whether it's through journaling or just sitting with themselves. I know there are many tools, not just journaling. And I think you share that how it has impacted you, and then set up boundaries about what you like and what you don't like, so that you can go and be more intentional about your choices. That will help you feel more, connected for who you are.
Yeah, 100%. And I know it is easier said than done, but like you mentioned, you have to do your part as a migrant as well, and this is one of those parts.
How do these things, I know that you're starting your career here. I know you are connected with other migrants who may be already doing a job. How do these things we discussed about identity crisis and the things about loneliness show up in career, or the latter part of their education?
I think when talking about the education, like I mentioned before, it can manifest as, not being very active in classes, and not being, not putting yourself out there, not, taking yourself out of the comfort zone. So I think that is how it can affect. That is how it can have an influence on you academically. And I think as for professional, same, like pretty much the same. Like um, you would not take a step to build genuine connection with your colleagues, because you're so trapped in your own thoughts of being lonely or an outsider. So yeah, I think that's pretty much how it would manifest in academics and your professional life.
Amazing. I can agree to those pointers as well, because it's the same challenge internally that shows up whether in different phases of your life. The external challenge you see on a day might feels or sounds a bit different, but if you are more aware of about your thought process and the thought patterns, you might realize probably that it shows up the same challenge in different ways, whether it's your career or education. One of the things I've experienced from other migrants is they fear speaking up in workplaces. Srishti, why do you think this happens?
I think the biggest reason for that could be, if we go down to the root cause of it, it could be that, okay, because it is so difficult to get a job in the first place, they might feel like, if I, speak up against something, what if I lose my job? And then going through that process of applying for another job and interview, which is in itself a struggle, because nobody is giving you a job on a silver platter. So I think that could definitely be the reason. Then B, again, like if I say something, what if it come across as silly? What if they think of me as someone, who asks, let's say, stupid questions? So I think a lot of it again has to do with how you feel about yourself internally.
What if that question can haunt us as humans in many ways? I think that creates that perceived reality in a future. It could be an illusion. Like, I know I'm not saying not to head set any goals or manifest about your future. Yeah, do that. But sometimes when it becomes, you're so consumed about that future identity, and that can take you away from that present moment of the reality that you're in, where you have the power to make choices, decisions in the present, but you're not taking it because of that fear in a perceived future. In your line of work, how do you see this word what if?
I think as a counselor, I do see this a lot in clients that, what if I leave this job? What if I do not get another job because I got this job after so much hard work? Then what if I speak in class and my peers think of me as someone stupid because of the question that I ask is so stupid? Then what if I speak to a stranger and he is rude to me? But I think the answer to what ifs can also, can only, you can only find the answer to the what if question is when you ask the question, you know so let's say, the stranger example, let's say a client comes to me and says, what if I say hi to a stranger and he is rude to me? So what if he's rude to you? Um maybe he's going through something in his own life that doesn't reflect on your worth. So again, like as a counselor, I feel like so much of our behavior has to do with how we feel about ourselves internally. So yeah, I think, coming back to your question, that is how it manifests in our line of work, and that is when we make the clients, go inward and really think about themselves, their fears, their vulnerabilities, their insecurities. And once I feel they work on them, is when the game changes.
That's very powerful, Srishti. Like, that's very profound too. I think, is it fair to say, how can we reframe this what if to what is introspective, and then maybe add so what? I think that's the biggest takeaway from our
Yeah,
conversation
so
today.
what?
For someone who is stuck, feels stuck, or having this identity, whatever it is, sometimes you can ask if you are living in this what if, and what can you do about it. You don't have to take, maybe not action, but just ask what is, what's this current moment, and if I take this action now, so what? Amazing insight. What is the worst, right? So sometimes they can journal it, like rather than writing
What is the worst that could happen,
a whole paragraph or a story, you can, what are the what ifs that I have in my mind right now? How can I reframe this in what is the current moment, how do I feel about it, and why do I feel about it? If I take this step right now, what is the worst that can happen? So
Yeah,
what?
yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think journaling does really help because I have been journaling for as long as I can remember. And when, there is this so many things going on in your mind, that there is this cloud and you don't know what to do, and everything is going wrong in your life, just let it out on a piece of paper, and that will give you so much clarity about where to go from here, about what to do. And yeah, journaling, I think, is a really good exercise, and that is one of the exercises that we actually, recommend clients in our line of work.
As they say, you're sitting under a tree covered with clouds, imagining where the sun is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. And you just have to get out of that tree to see the sun. And I think that's a beautiful way to end our conversation. Has been really Amazing to have this conversation with you, Srishti. We normally end our conversation in Unlayered with two questions. So I hope you're ready for it. My two questions are: the first one, I think the theme for our conversation was today was international students or migrant. If there is one migrant who is listening to this conversation today, who feels lonely, who feels isolated, who feels like an outsider, and is aware now, this person is going towards more these external channels or escapism methods of social media or any other. What is one message that you can share for this one person?
I think I would like to say that I am always available for them, and if they are feeling so much, like they can reach out to me anytime they want, and I will try my best to make them feel like they are not alone. So yeah, other than that, I think I would just like them to give the message that whatever you are feeling is very normal and very natural, and that they are not alone in this. Just take intentional steps to where you want to be, and just remember your why in your head, why you are here, and eventually you will get through it. I know it is easier said than done, but as someone who has been here for over 2 years, you will get through it.
Very powerful, and it's very generous of you to offer help. Thank you for that, Shristri. Next question is: what's one thing you unlayered in your
In
life?
my life, I think there is not just one thing that I have unlayered in my life after coming to Melbourne. There are a couple of things, but I think one of the biggest thing is that there is nothing that I cannot do. I have overcome, I think, a lot of obstacles, which I think if I had been in my home country, I might not have been able to. But after coming here, after living here for over 2 years, yeah, that's one thing that I've unlearned about myself. There's nothing that I cannot do.
And that's such a powerful message. Hopefully, that will go out from our conversations to everyone else listening. That there's nothing else you cannot do, um, as long as you believe in that. Thank you so much for the wonderful conversation, Sristri. It's been really lovely having you here. Thanks for accepting my invitation. And yeah, hopefully we'll have many more conversations together. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you so much for having me here, and I think this has been a very eye-opening and reflective conversation for me as well. And I think you were a really fantastic host. And I will definitely, be more than happy to have more conversations like this.
Definitely will do. Thanks, Sristri. Thanks so much.